The night air carried the scent of rain-soaked stone as Thomas stood trembling before the bound prisoner. His hands shook while torchlight flickered across the courtyard walls. Captain Alaric said, "Strike him down, or you will be judged as weak." Thomas's breath caught, for the condemned man was not a stranger, but a farmer from his own village. The crowd murmured, some eager, some fearful, while banners snapped in the cold wind. Eleanor clutched her shawl tighter, her eyes wide with terror. Thomas whispered, "If I obey, I betray my soul. If I refuse, I doom us all." His blade hovered, gleaming beneath the moonlight, while history demanded a choice that would fracture the kingdom forever. The storm growled as Thomas lowered the blade chest, heaving. Captain Alaric hissed, "Do it, coward, or your family will pay." Eleanor gasped, covering her mouth. The prisoner bowed, resigned. The crowd whispered. Thomas said, "I cannot be executioner for your lies." Alaric's fury rose as he gestured for soldiers. Thunder roared, drowning chains. Rattling, Thomas stood sword in hand, now marked as. Rain poured heavier. Soldiers dragged Thomas forward. His sword clattered. Eleanor cried, "No, he saved him, but..." Her voice was drowned. Captain Alaric barked, "Silence her." The prisoner whispered, "You chose truth." Thomas in chains said, "You cannot silence what the world already know." Captain Alaric sneered, "The world remembers only victors, not martyr." Thunder rolled as the storm lashed harder. Banners, soaked torches, sputtered. Shadows spread. Eleanor sobbed. The prisoner fell. Captain Alaric shouted, "This man has betrayed the crown." Soldiers echoed. Thomas raised his chin and said, "I betrayed only corruption." Gasps rippled. Some bowed, some spat. Lightning cracked, illuminating towers as if the kingdom itself trembled. Chaos erupted. Soldiers dragged Thomas to dungeon gates. Eleanor cried, "He is no traitor." Guards shoved her. Prisoner screamed, "He is our hope." Crowd murmured dissent. Captain Alaric snarled, "Take them all away." His cloak snapped. Thomas locked eyes with Eleanor, whispering, "Do not lose faith." He vanished into shadows. Rain hammered as people felt the ground. The dungeon stank of rust and damp stone as Thomas sat shackled in the dark. His chest rose heavily with each breath. Captain Alaric entered, torch in hand, sneering, "Your defiance will bring ruin upon your people." Thomas said, "Better ruin than silence." The prisoner chained beside him whispered, "They will turn the crowd against you." From above, Eleanor's muffled voice. Outside the dungeon, Eleanor was shoved back by soldiers. Her voice trembled. "He stood for truth. You cannot bury it." Captain Alaric smirked from the shadows. "Truth dies when men fear it." The prisoner groaned in despair. Thomas pulled against chains until wrists bled. He said, "You will fall. Alaric history will not bow to your lies." The crowd in the square swelled. Restless whispers spreading like fire. Captain Alaric raised his voice, promising order and security, yet his eyes betrayed greed. Thomas's defiance had seeded doubt. Eleanor walked among villagers, her voice trembling but steady. "I chose truth over fear." The prisoner dragged forward, spat blood, and shouted, "This is tyranny." Thomas, bound in chains, said. Inside a dim hall, Captain Alaric sat at a long table with nobles plotting rebellion's suppression. His cloak dripped rain onto stone. He said, "Fear will bend them before dawn." Thomas, guarded at the back, whispered to the prisoner, "Fear can break, but truth cannot." Eleanor, hidden among servants, overheard whispers of betrayal. A noble muttered, "If Thomas slides, the people will rise." Alaric slammed the table. Then he dees. Thunder rattled at windows, setups twisted and cracked. Night deepened as guards dragged Thomas back toward his cell. His body staggered, yet his eyes burned bright. Eleanor reached for his arm, whispering, "You gave them hope." Captain Alaric spat. "Hope feeds fools," the prisoner cried out. "You cannot kill truth." The crowd beyond the walls murmured louder, voices breaking into chants. Thomas whispered to Eleanor, "Do not let them silence." The dungeon door creaked open, revealing a cloaked stranger who slipped inside unseen by guards. The torchlight flickered across his hooded face. The shadow figure whispered, Your chains are not forever, Thomas. Thomas narrowed his eyes. Who are you, Captain Alaris? Voice echoed from above, barking orders. The prisoner coughed weakly, whispering, "Do not trust Shadow." Eleanor pressed against the bars, desperate to hear the shadow figure lean closer. The kingdom rots from within. The shadow figure stepped into the light, revealing sharp eyes and a scarred jaw. Eleanor gasped. You are no soldier. Captain Alaric entered suddenly. His cloak soaked from rain. He snarled, "Who dares trespass?" The shadow figure bowed slightly, merely a servant delivering words of loyalty. Thomas muttered, "Loyalty or lies?" The prisoner wheezed, "I smell betrayal." At his hunger for rised, that the figure knowing secrets, the figure knowing secrets. Night deepened as the shadow figure slipped free of Alaricus' watch. Eleanor whispered through bars. "Can he be trusted?" Thomas replied. "Trust is a luxury," the prisoner rasped. "Trust the innocent, not the hidden." Alaric strode across the courtyard above, proclaiming strength. To the people his voice thundered while whispers spread. Doubting his rule, Eleanor pressed her forehead to the bars. His eyes softened. "Then you..." In a hidden corridor beneath the keep, Eleanor followed the shadow figure. Torchlight flickered on damp walls. "He said Alaric prepares to crown himself king," she whispered. "Thomas must know." The prisoner's voice echoed faintly through stone. "The truth cannot be hidden." Meanwhile, Thomas endured another interrogation. Captain Alaric demanded, "Swear fealty or die." Thomas said, "Better death than chains of lies." The shadow The square brimmed with tension as Alaric addressed the people. His voice carried, "This traitor Thomas stands against your crown." Thomas, bound in chains, shouted, "I stand against corruption." Eleanor, hidden in the crowd, whispered, "They must see his courage." The prisoner, dragged forth, screamed, "He is..." Dawn broke under heavy clouds as the city awoke to fear. The square overflowed with whispers of revolt. Captain Alaric stood tall, proclaiming himself the only savior of the realm. Thomas, dragged before the crowd, raised his head. "Your savior is the rot that poisons this kingdom." Eleanor, hidden among villagers, clenched her fists, whispering, "They must see the truth." The prisoner's voice cracked, "Do not let them silence him." The shadow figure watched from shadows, his eyes sharp, calculating. Inside the Hall of Banners, Captain Alaric gathered nobles. His voice echoed, "The people will obey or bleed." Thomas, chained nearby, spat, "Your throne is built on lies." Eleanor, disguised as servant, slipped in quietly. Her eyes darting. Prisoner groaned from corner, "They will not obey forever." The shadow figure leaned against the wall, silent but calculating. Lightning flashed through cracked windows. The city erupted with cries as markets shuddered and bells tolled. Soldiers marched through streets in crimson cloaks, forcing silence. Thomas whispered to the prisoner, "This unrest is their fear made flesh." Eleanor shouted to villagers, "He stands for you, not against you." Captain Alaric roared from horseback, "Order will be restored." The shadow figure moved silently among alleys, whispering rebellion. In the dungeon again, Captain Alaric approached Thomas, his eyes blazing. "You have sown chaos," Thomas answered. "Chaos is truth unmasked." Eleanor cried from the bars, "Who will believe him?" The prisoner, though weak, shouted, "The kingdom has seen your greed." The shadow figure appeared from shadows, whispering, "The storm grows beyond your walls." Alaris's fury cracked as thunder shook stone. He snarled, "We will break every voice before..." Night returned with fire in the streets. Smoke curled above rooftops as villagers clashed with guards. Thomas, dragged across courtyard, whispered to Eleanor, "The kingdom rises." She pressed her hands to bars, whispering, "We will not falter." The prisoner's voice rang weak, but steady. "Truth spreads like flame." Captain Alaric stood on steps, shouting, "All!" The hall erupted in shouts as Captain Alaric declared Thomas guilty of treason. Thomas shouted, "I chose truth, not betrayal." The prisoner raised his bound hands, crying, "He defied you to protect us." Eleanor pushed through guards, screaming, "He'll lie!" Alaric! Gasps spread across the nobles. The shadow figure stepped forward, voice calm. "And yet the deeper betrayal is not his." Alaris' face darkened with... Captain Alaric slammed his fist on the table. "You will hang by dawn." The shadow figure pulled back his hood, revealing scarred face. "You crown yourself on blood." Eleanor gasped, You served the king once, Thomas, strained against chains. Why, help me now? The prisoner rasped, because lies rot, even those who spread them. I is no ally, only another viper. Lightning illuminated the hall, as whispers erupted. The shadow figure whispered. The prisoner collapsed to his knees, blood on his lips. He whispered, "There is more I must tell." Eleanor bent beside him, whispering. "Hold on," his voice broke. "I am heir to the line." Alaric stole. Gasps tore through the hall. Alaric shouted, "Lies." But doubt spread like fire. Thomas said, "The truth has lived in chains long enough." The shadow figure nodded solemnly. Now the king. Chaos thundered through the hall as nobles shouted. Alaric screamed, seized them. All guards surged forward. Eleanor shielded the prisoner with her body. Thomas roared, "You will not bury truth again." The shadow figure drew a hidden blade, deflecting soldiers. Alaric's fury split the air. "You dare betray me in my hall!" The prisoner's weak voice echoed as winds tore. "For betrayal." The floor shook as thunder roared. Alaric raised his sword above Thomas, shouting, "The kingdom belongs to me." Thomas shouted, "The kingdom belongs to its people." Eleanor screamed, "He will never rule us." The prisoner, coughing blood, whispered, "Carry it forward." The shadow figure lunged, striking steel against Alaric's blade. Sparks flew in firelight. The hall trembled as rebellion and tyranny clashed. Thomas shouted above the chaos. The great hall shook as steel clashed. Guards swarmed, yet the crowd outside roared louder. Captain Alaric shouted, "Your blood ends this chaos." Thomas lifted his chains, deflecting the strike with raw strength. Eleanor screamed, "He cannot fight bound." The prisoner coughed blood, whispering, "He fights for all of us." The shadow figure lunged beside Thomas, steel flashing. "This ends tonight." Torches toppled, sparks. The prisoner gasped, "You cannot let him crown himself." Alaric roared, "The throne bows to my will." Thomas struck forward, chains snapping against stone. His voice thundered, "The throne bows to truth." Eleanor shouted, "He stands for us all." The shadow figure drove Alaric back, sparks bursting with every strike. Guards faltered as rebellion cries thundered beyond walls. The torches toppled, fire spread along wooden beams. Alaric snarled, "You are nothing but a peasant in chains." Thomas's eyes blazed. "A peasant who will outlive your lies?" Eleanor pushed through guards, crying, "The people will never bow to you." The prisoner's voice cracked, "The air lives in chains, but truth is free." The shadow figure drove Alaric across the hall, blades striking. Flames devoured banners as Alaric bellowed, "I am the crown." Thomas swung broken chains, smashing his strike aside, shouting, "You are the ruin." Eleanor screamed, "End this now." The prisoner's last strength carried his voice. "Do not let him steal it again." The shadow figure leapt between them, blades colliding in a furious storm. Guards fled as rebellion thundered through gates. Outside the hall collapsed around them. Alaric and Thomas locked in final clash. Sparks flew, steel ringing. Thomas roared, "For the people." Alaric snarled, "For my crown." Eleanor shouted through smoke, "Do not yield." The prisoner coughed blood, whispering, "The line survives." The shadow figure struck low, forcing Alaric back. Thomas drove forward, wedged as Alaric. The hall lay in ruins, smoke curling through shattered beams. Captain Alaric's body slumped, silenced Thomas. Thomas stood bloodied and weary, his chest heaving. Eleanor rushed forward, crying, "It is done." The prisoner's faint voice whispered, "The crown is broken, but truth survives." The shadow figure stepped from firelight, murmuring, "Now comes the harder war, rebuilding." Thomas knelt beside the prisoner, clasping his hand. "Your truth lives." The courtyard smoldered as dawn broke over the ruined city. Villagers gathered, hushed and fearful. Eleanor stood tall, crying, "He fought for you, not against you." Thomas stepped forward, his chains shattered by battle. "Your voices are the true crown." The prisoner leaned on Eleanor, whispering, "Let them see hope." The shadow figure watched from the shadows, silent but approving. The crowd's whispers swelled into chants, and at the gates of the ruined hall, Thomas faced the crowd, his voice firm yet heavy. "The kingdom is ashes, but truth will rise." Eleanor gripped his arm, whispering, Do not bear it alone, the prisoner said weakly. The air lives, yet its weight must be shared. The shadow figure approached quietly. Every crown is shadowed, but yours must be light. Thunder faded, leaving silence, as villagers bowed not from. Eleanor walked beside Thomas through burned streets, her voice soft. The people believe because you endure. Thomas whispered, enduring is not enough, we must rebuild, the prisoner, leaning on staff, whispered. The crown was stolen, but now the people are its keepers. The shadow figure moved silently through alleys, whispering orders to bind rebellion into unity. Captain Alaris' banners torn lay trampled in the mud. The storm had passed. At the edge of the battlefield, Thomas stood gazing at smoke drifting across hills. Eleanor's hand rested gently on his shoulder, whispering, "You gave them tomorrow." The prisoner sat nearby, staff across his knees, whispering, "I gave you truth, now carry it." The shadow figure stood apart, silent, his hood low, his voice barely audible. "Shadows remember, hope walks in light," Thomas whispered. "History will remember not my